I'm good. All right, the clock says 7:01. I'll call the meeting to order at 7:01. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd like to join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, we have our public comment portion. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the board or public at this time? Yes.
Scott Cooper, Silver Township. I don't know if anybody saw this last week's Sun Times, big article, Chelsea approves land transfer agreement with Lima Township. I bring that forward because many times over the last 6-8 years, you've heard me mention that we should not do anything with the water and sewer. Lima is losing those 47 acres because they have no choice, because there's development going in on Freer and old US 12 at the east end of the town. We're protected because we have water and sewer. If like the Methodist home were to keep coming out this way, of which I know they want to do, somebody just bought up 75 acres across from Weinberg Dairy. If we were not in a position to service that, the city gets to, and the city gets the property. Okay. So unless we want to allow the city to nibble, and eventually we're out here paying Chelsea taxes, we have to keep the water and sewer. It just has to be an understanding that it's one of the pitfalls. We have the costs, but we will be able to make up for that if we hopefully put the services under the highway to the other side where Chelsea Chevrolet is. We've already lost out on 2 medical centers down in Grass Lake, and they're talking about a medical center here because we have no services at that end of the town, and it is prime for development. When I was serving, I talked to Bass Pro Shops and Kroger about taking land down there. It's prime for a hotel. It's prime for a medical center. We will get taxes to take care of the water and sewer. Secondly, I wish that Scott was here, Pacheco. There's a burned out house on the lake, and I don't know if anything's being done about it on Kavanaugh Lake. I'm told that it is remained standing. I thought it was maybe because of insurance, but I'm told it's remained standing because the owner will be required to prove his footprint. In the meantime, it's leaning. It's a safety hazard. It's a potential hazard for kids goofing around in it. I wish that Scott or somebody, or maybe Steve Kiss, would go out there, measure the footprint, provide the owner with whatever they need to secure future building rights, and then allow them to tear that down as soon as possible. Because if you haven't seen it, it's terrible. It's gutted. There's no repairing it, and it's leaning, and all it's going to take is one kid getting hurt, and that's what we don't need.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes.
Okay. Patrick Ziski, Sylvan Township resident. The main thing I wanted to say again is to refer to kind of, in my mind, the big elephant in the room, the 4.4 mils that we're paying because we have the water and sewer system that Mr. Cooper just talked about. One thing that needs to be the cost that we're all paying and we can add up how much cost that's been over 12 years since that millage has been there, we have to ask ourselves whether that cost was really worth it. For whatever goal we think that water and sewer is serving in terms of territorial integrity or something like that. But at this point, it really does seem like the township has enough money to be able to meet our future obligations without continuing the tax. And I want to reiterate how important that is. It's important to lots of things. It's important to things like the land preservation millage, which is going to come up tonight. I mean, not the millage, but the committee, which could lead to a millage, right? Because if people think they're already overtaxed, they won't even vote for a modest millage for something that they believe in. And even after the millage ends, we're still transferring $200,000 a month into operations. And that is a weight on this township. It prevents this township from doing things that a lot of people have suggested, including putting money toward roads, let's say. It's taking money out that could be spent on something else. So there is cost associated with the water and sewer too. I'm going to speak in agreement partially with what Mr. Cooper said as well, though. I think going under I-94 might be a unique opportunity that will pay off financially, since we already have the system built. But we've heard very different cost estimates of what it would take to run under I-94. We need to get a real cost estimate that we can feel confident about. I'm not saying the other ones weren't real. I'm just saying we need to be confident that we know what the numbers are so we can make a decision there. The development definitely will come there. I'm usually not for promoting development or subsidizing development, but in this case, to the best of my knowledge, the people who own the property to the south of I-94 on M52 generally have an understanding that it's going to go toward some kind of commercial development, then they're okay with it. I don't think it's hurting the neighbors, as far as I know. I'm just saying what I know. Very, very different when it comes to Pierce Road. Most of the people who live along Pierce Road do not want, at least they don't want high density development, from what we've heard many times. Though expanding the water and sewer districts there has a very different implication, right? That is subsidizing unwanted development. I don't think we should sell out the township in that way. If something's not wanted, don't subsidize it. And if you don't subsidize it, maybe you'll find out that you didn't have to fight it either, because it just doesn't happen. So that's what I hope there. I really would stand in opposition of expanding the water and sewers district in any place other than the corridor south of I-94. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda, which contains draft meeting minutes, presentation of bills, correspondence, committee, board, and department reports.
I will move to approve the consent agenda. Second.
Thank you.
I would just like to note that Kurt, I spelled your name wrong. Under, sorry,
Sorry.
under new business planning commission recommendation of the zoning text amendment under roll call vote, I spelled your name wrong.
No worries.
I spelled that correct.
All right, motion from Kurt, supported by Rod, to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say nay. Thank you. Motion carries. Next is the approval of the agenda. Oh, it says consent agenda again. Which has no unfinished business, 2 items under new business. And I have an item that Mr. Pacheco wanted us to add tonight. Addition of fee schedule to include administrative site plan review fee. So I would like to add that to the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of the agenda add administrative site plan review fee of $200 to the fee schedule.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Amanda, support from Rod. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Thank you. Motion carries. All right, so the first item under our new business. Oh, goodness. Sandy. Establishment of advisory committee to study land preservation ordinance.
So by bringing this up, I didn't mean that we're actually going to be appointing a board or anything tonight. Because I'm still waiting to hear back from our attorney. And what I would like us to do is to approve establishing an advisory committee. Because as you know, it takes forever for anything to pass through the board. If tonight we decide, and we want to talk about it a little bit too, to establish an advisory committee to study the current land preservation ordinance as well as ordinances from other townships. We want to make sure that we do it right, but we got to get started. That's the first thing that we have to do is say, yes, we want to look into land preservation, conservation ordinance. And then when we hear from the attorney, then we will come back and discuss what it is that he has to say. But I mean, it just pushes it a month ahead of time if we don't decide now. I mean, I could get an email from him tomorrow. But if we've already said, yes, we want to look into this, then we have that part of it done. And there's a bunch of questions. Amanda, when you were on the broadband committee, did any of the township people on the broadband committee get paid for that?
If you were not an official, by law, you have to be paid if you're not an official.
Okay.
It was $25. It was a
Yeah.
mandatory stipend.
So that's a thing that we'll have to decide about this group. From what I've seen that they've done in other townships, is they'll have an advisory committee who will look at everybody's ordinances and talk about what they think fits our township, following the suggestions from our attorney. Then that committee reports they make a decision and they give that to the board, and then the board says yes or no, or makes changes to it. Then there is possibly a second committee, and this is, if everything goes through and we have more pithy land conservation ordinance, then there will be a group of people who will look at applications from property owners in the township. And they could be the same group, they may not be the same group. I mean, these are little fine details. It's going to take a while to hack that stuff out. But what I'm asking tonight is for us to establish an advisory committee to study the land preservation ordinance. And to that end, to make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees.
You're gonna head that up?
Pardon me?
You're gonna head that up?
Of course.
I'm just asking.
And I think it's a little unfortunate Scott's not here, because I wonder if Scott Pacheco probably would have some,
Oh, gosh, yes.
all sorts of,
Oh, yeah.
interesting, helpful things to say. I mean, I'm in support of the idea here. I just want to make sure we're not putting the cart in front of the horse. I understand what you're saying too. You could get your answers tomorrow.
Yes.
And if we said, we were interested in moving in this direction, it moves us along. It is very frustrating part of government, the speed at which we do things. So I understand that as well. I will say I'm in support of land preservation. I know we have an ordinance. I'm just wanting to make sure that we're doing things in the right order.
Absolutely. And the ordinance that we have has no teeth because there's no funding attached to it. When Barry Lonick was here, he said 0.5 mils, which is at that time, like $50 on some property. Because if you look at what they have in Dexter Township, it's like $125,000 annually from their 0.5 mil, which is not a lot of money. But when you're going out shopping for grants from Washtenaw County, from the state, from the federal government, you have to have some money to put up. They're not just going to give you money because they like you. They want you to be invested as well.
I think I'm going to echo what Kathy said. I completely, absolutely agree with this and support this, but I would like to hear back from Saul and make sure that we're just proceeding.
We're not
I know.
proceeding anything. We're just saying that we're going to look into it. That's what we're saying.
Well, you have that you're establishing advisory committee.
Let me rephrase that to. No, I'm leave it at that because we will establish a committee, but maybe I add following the direction of our attorney. How's that?
Following or contingent upon, sometimes those are ways we talk about things too and say, hey, we're agreement contingent upon these things.
Yeah.
So
So,
why would we need to talk to an attorney to establish a committee?
because he said we did. I emailed him years ago. And, so I'm waiting. I'm patient. Because he had done this with some other townships, and so he has experience with it.
So where I struggle with this is 1/3 of our township is already state land.
Mhm.
That's 1/3 of our township. Then if you look at the Chrysler Proving Grounds, I don't know if that's another 1/5 or, so there's already a lot of land in the township that's preserved. Then on top of it, we're already paying 0.5 mils to the county for land preservation, and we've used that money. So what exactly, if this committee is going to just charge forward to get something on a ballot, I wouldn't be in support of that. But if this committee is going to study it to see, is this something we actually need? And what the,
I'm sorry, but in the 2022 election, there were probably 3 or 4 townships that added this particular ordinance. So we're hanging out there, not putting up any money. But if you recall at the master plan meeting, there was a farmer here who said, to him, his land is his retirement funding. We have to, for people who don't want to see any kind of land sold for development, you can't strangle the property owner that way because it is their land. They have their life plan. By having a land preservation ordinance that has money behind it, you can help that person achieve their retirement dreams.
Well, from what I heard from Barry Lonick is if you're looking for grant funding, they want to see you put something on the table as well,
Absolutely.
which is why we have to have. money set aside.
Absolutely.
But Kurt, to answer your question, because I've heard this from others, we have this big land bank from the state. But when you're looking at habitat, you can't just have a huge land bank in one part of your township. You need to have smaller tracts of land that you hope are contiguous in some way for wildlife to move through it. So you can't, you want habitat to be throughout the township, and having those smaller banks that are preserved in addition to the big bank is just conducive to
Right,
good-
so-
good wildlife habitat.
so all these issues, is that something this committee would study? And they would do it under a project charter, format, and there would be public input to it?
We are the ones who decide what's going to happen, and that information comes from our attorney. And also by looking at our neighboring townships, what they've done. We give the direction. We give them the direction. We say, this is what we want you to do over a year. And then at the end, come back to the Board of Trustees with your recommendations. The board doesn't have to take, they're just suggestions.
We are lucky in Sylvan, we do have residents that are interested in this committee who have a lot of experience with this that I've reached out to already.
Right.
And that's where we,
So to establish a committee, you don't need an attorney for that.
We need to look at who needs to be represented on the committee. I don't know.
well, maybe,
you
there-
don't-
but maybe there's a structure to the committee though that would be more efficient. than
under-
what Saul has seen in. the
Under
other
Robert's
committees.
Rules of Orders, it has committee structures. It has, everything is right there. You don't need an attorney for it. When
Well,
you get to the point where you want to create ballot language, then you should probably have an attorney involved, but an attorney would be way before the.
I don't want to start going the wrong way, honestly.
And we
It's a brand
do,
New thing that we haven't done before. I want us to do it right.
and we do have an ordinance,
We
a
do.
land preservation ordinance, and it talks about this group. And so I think, and maybe Scott can be, extra helpful too, to sort of read that current ordinance and see what it says, because maybe that current ordinance says, these are I mean, I think it was very general and broad. I can't remember offhand, but there's something there. And whether it's Scott or Thal in a minimal way, we don't want to incur a lot of legal fees on this, but helping us look at what's already there and saying, to me, like, this is what you have right now. Are you ready to move forward?
Right, so again, to me, that's putting the cart way before the horse. What we should be doing is figuring out, is this something that people want? Personally, I live across from lots of state land, and the millage you're gonna charge me would do nothing, for where I live. And I'm already paying $25,000 a year in property taxes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so,
Right.
I'm already very sensitive to it, and I wonder how many other people in this township, when I go around and talk to people in the township, they talk about how taxes are eating them up. So why
Well-
wouldn't we be asking the people, is this something you think you want as part of a committee? And then if we think we want it, then go through and have legal and attorneys and start the process. But to me, it sounds like you're already saying, yeah, we want to get this out for a vote as soon as we can. And I don't
It's not.
think that's where we need to.
They have to study it at least a year. In Dexter, it might have been a year and a half. Nothing is going to happen in a big hurry. And that's why I want to get started now.
How much state land does Dexter
Mhm.
Township have? How about Waterloo Township? That's probably 80% state land. Do they have a land preservation?
We don't have
Ordinance?
80%, you know.
And Waterloo Town? How about Unadilla?
Oh, we don't. We don't.
Well, we have over 1/3 of the land in the township is already state land. That's already preserving a lot of land.
That seems awful high. Is it correct? A third? Seems high. Because if you think about south of 94, other than the proving grounds, nothing's state land. And the northern western quadrant,
But
not
so-
really. So it's just particularly probably where you live. And I think it's going to be difficult for us unless we put it on a ballot to find out how everybody feels. Because I know how
Why
you
wouldn't-
feel and I know how maybe your neighbors feel, but I know what I feel. And I know what I've heard from people at these umpteen meetings we've had on this, open house. People are just saying over and over, we want to preserve our rural character. We want to make sure that we're doing these things. And I think this is an opportunity to do that. But I think for us to sit here and say, we're going to find a way to get input from everybody in the township, that's just not going to happen. We just have to move the best we can. We're voted to represent.
The end result is having it on the ballot and people will decide whether they want to or not, but we have to put the work in starting soon. Because if there's however long it's going to take until we even get to the point where we're appointing a committee, then the committee studies it for a year or more. This is it's a long-term thing. And I'm saying we need to get started now.
Right, I'd like to see a project charter for it. What exactly is the scope of work for this?
Well, and again,
And
we
we'll
already,
establish that.
we already have an ordinance that has language about the Land Preservation Board. So I think, to my mind, we need to have Scott look at that and
Okay.
make sure, that looks good. It's old as the hills, like all of our ordinances. But anyway, and then if we need input from Rob Fall, I knew he said there was a specific process and a way that you would do it. You would establish and then you would do. So I think just in the minimal legal to get something from Fall would be good. But I'm interested in what we already have existing. How is that interpreted? How does this relate to what we have?
Okay, so if we already have something, then you don't need a committee to establish
Yes, we
something.
do. They have
You-
to look at the neighbors to see. what
Excuse me,
they're-
you're interrupting.
Pardon me?
You're interrupting.
I apologize.
Thank you. If we already have an ordinance and it's on the books and we think it's inadequate, then let's pursue that. Let's get Scott Pacheco involved in it and see if he needs legal advice. If he needs legal advice, then let's go hire an attorney. But if you're establishing a committee to do something with an ordinance, I think is is putting the cart way before the horse.
Mhm. Understood. So I will just say, again, I'm supportive of this. We already have something on the books. I would be supportive of Scott, Sandy, Rob Fall to the extent that we would need his, that Scott feels he needs, would need him. I think we all rely on him and trust that where he felt like maybe he needed some legal advice, he'd get it. But have them look into what we've established, what we have established already, and then how we can use that and work going forward. No, it doesn't establish a committee tonight, but, or maybe, I don't know. How does that?
So I'm asking the board to establish an advisory committee to study following directions of our attorney and Scott to look at our current land preservation ordinance as well as ordinances of other townships in Washtenaw County to the end of making recommendations to the board. The board is not required to accept recommendations, but will take them under consideration.
I'm hearing what Kurt's saying and I agree. I think that there should be some structure and a charter presented for us to consider. So that we have a better idea of what what this very specific goals of this committee would be.
Right. What I'm asking is that we officially say we're going to make this happen, allow this to happen. We're not doing anything tonight. We're simply saying we are going to do this.
I think what I would be in support of, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, you have a motion established here, see where it goes.
So I so move.
So, okay, so the motion here, or did you modify it a little bit? I just
did.
want to make sure we all are clear on
All
what
right,
motion
thank
is
you.
being.
So one more time, please.
So I'm asking the board to establish an advisory committee following the direction of our attorney and Scott Pachenko to study Sylvan's current land preservation ordinance as well as ordinances of other townships in Washtenaw County to the end of making recommendations to the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees is not required to accept the recommendations, but will take them under consideration.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion. Did I not say the
No,
right word in the
thank you.
beginning? I move.
All right, motion from Sandy. Is there support? Yeah. So if there's not support, then the motion fails. I would like to, I don't know exactly if Robert Rules says we would move on or not, but I would just like to say that I would support a motion using all that language absent creating the committee tonight. I would support a motion, sort of like we directed Mr. Pacheco last time, directing Scott, your staff to work with the attorney in investigating an ordinance and reporting back.
What's the
That's
first
me.
part of that again? I'm sorry.
Just, the only part of the motion that made me a little leery was establishing the advisory committee tonight. Because tomorrow Scott
Oh,
could
I
start
see.
working on this. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I understand I want to keep it moving, but I don't want us to have to wait to establish a committee for Scott to work with those people, because who are those people and how does it get established? And
Mhm.
so I would be more in favor of directing Scott to work with you and Mr. Thal to look at our current ordinance and come forward with a plan using what we have.
Right.
Okay.
And
So-
you said, Kathy, how does it establish? What is the charter? What are the goals?
Right, and I think it's
A little
all
more
in our
structure.
ordinances.
Right.
Some of
So
it,
we need
so-
Scott to weigh in.
So could I make a motion then? That we direct zoning administrator, planner Scott Pacheco to work with Attorney Thal and Trustee Schulze to look at the established Sylvan Township Land Preservation Ordinance and report back with a plan to move forward. All right, motion from me, supported by Sandy. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, thank you. Motion carries. All right. All right, the next item is the presentation of the State of Michigan PA 660 audit results that Catherine Sculler, our sister, is here to talk about.
Screenshot of what we have on our assessing page on our website. I have additional documents in the back there. This is simply just the assessing page on the Sylvan Township website. Because I think perhaps people may be unaware of what we have out there. The counties in the state of Michigan, the counties and municipalities are audited on a 5-year schedule, and Washtenaw County was audited this year. We were audited also another time since I've been here, but the audit requirements change. The audit was very, very involved, incredibly detailed, and I wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you to the Township Board for giving us the tools back in 2019. Prior to coming to work here, I'm sure that most people are aware that the assessing office had a lot of work to be done, and we would not have been able to meet the requirements that were unknown to us at that time. But what was required this year was that all information has to be available online. That means every individual property data, pictures, sketches, our land value studies, maps, our improved studies, all of that had to be out there. For example, I even had a little bit of pushback with the state. Our land value studies that I just uploaded from our data was 172 pages. It was exhausting, but that is what they required this year, was that anyone, and it's arguable, do we have broadband here or not? But they said, you know, you're in an area, maybe it was our proximity to Chelsea, we were required to put everything online. So what I've given you is just a quick snapshot for your information, and for anyone else here, you can grab it on your way out if you're curious at all. Everything in blue is a clickable item. So that includes things that have come before the board before, hardship information, but it also includes everything else. Our studies are out there. There's a property tax calculator out there. So there is a lot of information. The requirements were extreme. We absolutely couldn't have met these requirements. Absolutely could not have done it without Legacy that was approved in 2019. They started a miserable time during COVID. They started in around May or June of 2020. And then they had to come back and finish in 21 because COVID slowed them down a little bit. What they did is they did the field work on the properties that were not refusals. They did the field work. They gave us apex sketches and they gave us photos. We reviewed everything thoroughly in-house, brought it in, made it part of our files, and then uploaded it. We had everything available online. Last year in 2023, we just didn't have the full everything out there. We thought it was a little overkill. I don't know how many people have looked at our website already, but to have to put that much out there, it was a lot. And I am very grateful. We could not have done it. I hope the board looks at this, even though it was the assessing office that was audited. It really is meant to be an audit of the municipalities, how you are, and without the support, and it's a very unpopular office. I know that nobody wants that office necessarily to be funded, but without funding that office, things can become out of whack. They can become ununiform. There become more problems. We have not had any tribunal appeals in the last couple of years. Things have been very quiet, and I attribute that to being able to have better data. And I wanted to say thank you, and that township should look at it as a win to you for allowing us to have the tools to do it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And we know, most of us, I think, know this was a tremendous amount of work in the assessing office. And now that you're up to speed, hopefully in 5 years when we come around again, it won't be such an undertaking because you'll be starting from a great base. So it was a lot of work. And also it's a testament to the board supporting you, but also you and Susan and your work here. Just stellar and very happy, and you're above and beyond in terms of the things that need to be on our website. I think, wasn't there somebody who told you that we have more information than like Washtenaw County does, or there were other larger entities that they said actually Sylvan had the most helpful assessing page. So that's a real proud moment for us also. Yes.
Very.
Yes, thank you. Well, that's really nice to see. I wish, that says, we've got a perfect score and that we were found substantially compliant. So wonderful, a perfect score. You can't ask for better than that. Thank you. Anybody have any questions or anything?
Nope.
All right.
Thanks for sharing that.
And thanks for being here.
Yes.
It's a confusing thing. Not a lot of people understand and yeah. All right, now just moving on to our added item, addition of the fee schedule. So last month, Scott, the board approved the administrative site plan review so that people didn't have to come in all the time for every tiny thing. And Scott's been working on that, but we did not assign a fee to it. So he proposed $200. He said right now he's working under something here on our fee schedule that says 400. And he felt like that was high. So he wanted us to just, if we were willing to pass this, so then he could start processing some of these at a more reasonable rate for the residents.
I'll make a motion to approve the fee schedule as amended to include the ASPR fee of $200.
Go ahead, Sandy.
Andy. All right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Thank you. Motion carries. All right, and that concludes the business portion of our meeting. We have the other public comment. Anybody would like to address the board? If not, Board of Trustee comments. And I will just say real quick to Patrick, and everyone, we sent a very large check to the county treasurer's office, including the tap fees that had been collected. And I think there was a bit of a misunderstanding with the accountant. I think she was waiting on numbers. At any rate, the check was sent. I checked with Mr. Sweeney in the Treasury Department at the county. He said, yes, they received it. And he hopes tomorrow to have a new total for us. And he said, with the payment, the large payment we just sent, we're well into the next debt payment already. But he said he's going to have to see how the math works out. So this was tomorrow. He said he'd hope he'd have the numbers to me once they've accounted for these monies. And then I'm hoping to catch Mr. Pfeffer next week because we, that's one side of it. And then I know the board also wanted to say, okay, this is what is due and these are the monies we have on hand. We have a pretty good idea from the audit already that there are monies there. So that's moving forward. Ultimately, we need to, if the board does not want to assess that anymore, we feel comfortable on the L 4029. We talked about that last month. We won't, it'll only have our operating operating millage of 0.9492, whatever it is. And then we wouldn't list the 4.4 on there. And that paperwork is due to the county, I think it's September. So we do have to move quickly on it, but I'm feeling positive about where we are. It sounds like finance is saying we're in a good spot.
So we can do another conference call with the county when they update their spreadsheet.
Yep.
We'll have numbers in front of us.
Yep. And if he gets them to me tomorrow, it's the day before the holiday. I mean, I wouldn't expect we'd
Yeah.
be ready to meet for, a couple of weeks, but
But I,
Yeah,
yes,
that's
I would
moving
definitely,
along.
I would like those numbers and then I would like us to sit down with Thal and Pfeffer and probably Kimberly.
mhm. Right.
to
And
make
we
sure
can
it's
sit
fine.
down with Thal. I think he may have exhausted his with his, like, just how you're gonna cease it is he just won't list it on the 4029. But we
So
could,
maybe
just
Pfeffer.
make sure from him, it's
Okay.
expensive, but
It's-
yeah,
But Pfeffer, I mean, I would definitely,
Yes.
I want to have a discussion with Pfeffer and Kimberly.
right, yes, right. It was what was it, a million?
2.6.
1.26 million.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then there was something else that,
Correct.
right. Um. I can't, there was something else, but I can't remember, but does anybody else have, that
Yeah,
is-
just want to let you know that we have mailed 806 absentee ballots as of today as we prepare for the August 6th primary. And then on Saturday, July the 27th, that will be the period that early voting begins. And Sylvan Township is the early voting site for this side of the county. So if you do want to vote in person during that early voting period, you will come to Sylvan Township. And it's the hours that we allowed last time, I think, was from 9 to 5. And probably will be similar this next early voting period as well. Okay, that's all. All right.
And then our next board meeting, due to the election in August being the first Tuesday, I think the next board meeting is August 11th, something like that, which is about 6 weeks away from now. So we have a really long time in between board meetings. What's that? Ah,
13.
okay, Tuesday the 13th. So we have a lot of meetings between then. The other thing is I know we were gonna, the board has been talking about, ARPA and having another meeting regarding that with our accountant. Kimberly has a lot of advice. She handles the ARPA funding and the other townships in which she serves. So she will be very helpful. She's gonna get us some dates this month that she can sit down and talk with all of us about, that. So that will be a date coming forward. I'm still trying to get, we had to cancel the joint meeting with the planning commission and the board. So what I'm wondering maybe might be the best thing is to just say maybe at 6 o'clock before our next board meeting on the 13th. And see if that's a time where people could come. Because it seems like it's really difficult. And I know at least, if the board, since we are the more umbrella sort of board here, body, we would need a quorum of us to have the meeting, right? It's a board meeting and the planning commission is there too. But I think we wouldn't really be able to have a joint meeting without a quorum. I don't know if we need a quorum of both bodies. I think we probably just need a quorum of the board. If we're all here, maybe planning commission can come. That's my next option. It's very difficult. This has been lingering for a long time. This is just an extra step. This is not a mandatory step in the process. Really, what the next step could be would be the planning commission hearing it and agree to distribute, and then it would go to the board. And then I think there's a 42-day waiting period, and then there's a public hearing. And then it would go. So this step was sort of just like, hey, this has been a while. Things went a little off, bring everybody together so the board and the planning commission were understanding where Sarah is. But I also don't want this meeting that we're trying to call together that's not mandatory, hold us up for another 6 or 8 months. That's frustrating. It's a large group to bring together. So that's my plan right now, is maybe just say 6 o'clock. I'll send an email out to everybody, not to make our board meeting evenings any longer, but you know, it's tough, especially in summer. All right, any other board comments? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 7:46.
Move to adjourn.
Thanks, Brad. I'll support. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Thank you.